In this video, we're talking about death and dying during the current pandemic and how we can support people during this time. I'm Nicola Robinson and I'm a URC ministry student. For me, this pandemic has made death and dying feel so immediate. In the conversations I've had with family and friends, with church communities, I'm struck by how much grief, how much bereavement there is, and I feel passionate we need to find ways to support people and to talk about death and dying. In this video, I'm talking with Marion Chatterley, who is an Episcopal priest and Vice Provost at St Mary's Cathedral in Edinburgh. Marion, I'm aware you've worked a fair bit in this area. Can you tell us a little bit about this, please?
I first worked around death and dying as a bereavement counsellor with Cruz for about 15 years. And then after I was ordained, I became chaplain to people living with HIV and have been in that role for more than 20 years now. So I was working around HIV in the very early days of that epidemic and really got a sense of what death and dying and multiple bereavements means to a distinctive community.
So it's individual and it's community.
I think that's really important at the moment, actually, because there are the individual situations that we read about and see on the TV and perhaps know about through personal contact or indeed personal experience. But there's also the sense of loss within our communities. At the moment, we're all experiencing a loss of freedom, a loss of choice.
Yeah.
A loss of control, in a sense, over our own lives and destiny, and no sense really of when that'll end. And so I think that there are real parallels with what people experience either at the very end of a loved one's life or in the early stages of bereavement.
So do you think there are specific challenges in facing death and bereavement that this pandemic presents?
Yeah, I think there are real parallels, actually, with the early days of HIV. Within communities, huge numbers of people are frightened, and there's a real sense that nobody knows who might be next. But I think because so many people are feeling anxious and living with the fear, there's a heightened sense within society, I think, of people's mortality. And I guess some of that was played out around the conversations around don't attempt CPR. And the whole question about whether people should be encouraged to think about signing that paperwork, having those conversations with their clinicians, and the clinicians signing off the paperwork. When we hear stories around people being asked to at least think about it, I think inevitably we're pushed into thinking, well, actually, what would that mean? And also pushed perhaps into thinking a little more carefully around what intensive end-of-life care might mean and whether it's something we would really want. You know, there's been such an advance in medical science, and we've lived with a bit of a fantasy that medicine can save almost everybody. And actually, one of the things this pandemic has done has reminded us that that's not true.
And do you think these conversations are happening on a personal level, or is it within a hospital setting?
I think it's both, actually.
Okay.
So when I've had conversations with some of the people in our cathedral congregation who are shielding, I know that they actually have had those conversations with their loved one. Personally, I think that's one of the good things that's coming out of this. There is a bit more national discourse around end of life, rather than being a topic that people find too difficult to even contemplate, which I think often has been the case. Or a topic that makes people scared. There's kind of something bigger there that people are even more scared of. In an odd sort of way, that's allowed the conversations about end-of-life planning to come into play.
That would resonate with what I've come across with personal conversation. The taboo is less, because when it is a loved one, it makes it very immediate, and then the conversations do happen. What would that look like for your own family?
I think because we've seen on the TV photos of people who've been intubated, and indeed seen footage of people who've been extubated and have survived, but have seen what the impact of that is. And I think that helps perhaps with some of the conversation around what's appropriate for people who are very frail. So I think it takes the conversation away from a kind of binary which is about discrimination against older people and can quickly get into a conversation about rationing of healthcare, and takes it more into a conversation about reasonable choices and quality of life. If you became very poorly, would you want this host of intervention? And given the current circumstances, would you want that host of intervention in a situation where your loved ones wouldn't be able to visit? They're hugely difficult conversations and indeed hugely difficult choices. But I think it's a real positive that some of that is actually being discussed and is out in the open.
I've also been really struck by, in our current situation, how many of us have not been able to attend funerals. For those who have been unable to attend a funeral, there are good ways or positive ways that we're able to support them.
I do think the situation is incredibly hard. I think the fact that we can't have funerals in churches, the couple of funerals I've done since the lockdown has been the option of live video streaming, which then has been made available for a period of time after the funeral. And I think that's helpful to allow people to at least witness the funeral, because there is something about seeing the person's coffin for the last time that I think resonates with us and is an important part of the process. So I think we will have to find ways after the lockdown eases enough that we can gather within faith communities, or indeed in other ways. I think we will have to find ways to honour people's lives and to mark their passing from this life. And I think that's something, as a faith community leader, I'm already thinking about. I think it's something that will be around for quite a long time, actually, and will be something of a process.
Are there other ways that we're able to offer support?
At the moment, that's challenging. I think clearly we can offer people one-to-one support in different ways. More people are using the communication tools that are available to us. So I'm hoping that people feel less isolated. I think that social media does offer opportunities. So the fact that people can honour somebody on a Facebook page by sharing memories and reflections and photographs isn't the same and will never be the same, but actually might be the best we can do in the situation we're in. And I think that simply to remind people that lighting a candle, taking somebody with you in your heart when you go on your walk, maybe even planting something for them, even if you've not got a garden, getting a wee house plant or something that you nurture sort of in that person's honour. I think there are always creative ways we can hold somebody with us. And I guess one of the big opportunities for many people will be once they're allowed to do something with ashes. So I suspect that burying ashes or scattering ashes or planting trees on top of ashes or whatever it is people choose to do will actually take on quite a significance in the future. I wonder whether actually we'll find ways to make something much more of that.
And to open up that conversation. Again, it's about talking about it and thinking either what that person would have wanted, or if it was yourself, where would you like your ashes to be?
Exactly. And you're right, making sure that your loved ones know.
Sharing these conversations about the importance of who you are and how you want remembered or honouring that life. Absolutely. I'd like to end by saying thank you so much to Marion for sharing your insights and your experience. It's been fantastic to be able to talk about in this difficult pandemic.
It's a privilege to have had the conversation with you.